So, Matt, thank you very much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it. How are you getting on at the moment? What are you up to?
Pretty good, man. I just got back from vacation, so I took a couple weeks off, and then every time I take a vacation, it just makes me anxious to get back to work
Yeah.
because I feel guilty. My work ethic is driven by guilt, so I end up come back and just being overwhelmed with stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm writing a bunch of stuff right now.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. Like, do you find it easy to take a vacation and a break? Because it sounds to me like you're a bit, you sort of feel guilt when you go away. So, do you get to really enjoy your time off, or do you never? Have you never enjoyed time off?
Yeah. No, I do. The trick for me is like I gotta schedule it, make
Yeah.
the schedule that. If I don't, because it's the same with like weekends. Like I work weekends. Like all last year, I worked every weekend, and then this year, I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to work on Saturday and Sunday like most people.
Yeah.
I'm going to take 2 days off. So I started doing that, and that was hard at first because it's like, what do I got all this extra time. It feels like, and then, but I feel like if I'm not working, I feel like I'm wasting my time most of the time.
Yeah, no, I get that, man, for sure. So how easy was it? Because again, I think that's a creative thing, they call it the creative curse. It lasts, forever. You're constantly trying to work. How easy was it to get out of what I guess is years of, working weekends, working all the time? Did you have to put any kind of discipline habits in place for you to make sure you can now take weekends off?
No, the best thing I can do is I just leave my laptop at the studio.
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, if I'm gonna work, I'm gonna have to get in the car and drive to the studio. So that helps. And then also just like I've been finding good books. I've been the irony is like inspiration comes from like reading and watching movies and things. And then there's a point where I've been working so much, I haven't been reading, I've been watching movies. And so if anything, I'm just getting back to that.
Yeah.
Watching more movies, reading some more books, and getting inspired.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. I'm really pleased for you as well. Like, it sounds like obviously you've done so much work over the last few years, and obviously your career, you worked for many different organizations, as well as doing a lot of great work for those organizations. I wanted to ask you, as someone who many would consider, and lots of award nominations, etc., as well, would dictate successful. Now, I wanted to get your definition of success and what it means to you. How do you define success as a person, but also, working in comic books?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I feel like the definition of success has sort of shifted over the years. Like I think it just depends on where you're at. Like at the beginning, I remember when I first met my wife, when we were just dating, she's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to get a graphic novel published. I want to write and draw a graphic novel and get it published. That's my definition of success. Then that happened. I was like, oh, well, we meet some of those goals. And it's like, oh, well, I got to figure out, well, what's the next goal? Like I'm definitely goal oriented. It's like, what do I want to do? And then how do I get there? So after that first book, it was like, well, I just want to now I want to like try to make a living at it, and then eventually that starts to happen. And I've been doing it long enough where like those goals have become less concrete. It's like, well, now I want to just experiment. I want to try a different. I've never written a horror book. I didn't realize that till last year, and I was like, well, let's write something in the horror genre, because I think I just want to push myself, and I was just talking to Tyler Jenkins, one of my collaborators, on the phone right before this call, and we were talking about how, what we want to do next, and pushing each other and trying to do something that we're both kind of scared to do, and trying something new. And then what I was saying to him was like, we're at a point now where it's not about getting published, or the work is there as much as we want, as much as we can do. So now that it's just being staying interested, and then pushing ourselves. And I was like, there's almost a self-destructive part of the creative process now, where it's like, I want to push it to where I was like, I don't know if I can do it, or I don't know if this is going to work, and then to stay interested and to have that sort of scared feeling as a creator, of like, ooh, I don't know if this is going to work. But then doing that, it's like, well, then you're also like, it's like, am I sabotaging myself at the same time by making it something impossible to do? So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, actually, because again, you've to a lot of people on the outside, you've done it all. You work, you've worked on some incredible publications and done so much. Do you find, when you're having that conversation like the one you were just having before this, what does scare you now? What is it that, how would you push yourself now as someone who seemingly, to an outsider like myself, you've kind of done a lot. You've done it all. You know what I mean? So what would scare you now if you were going to, on the next project?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes in different forms. Like we're talking about an idea now where it's like, it's a story about a cat.
Okay, cool.
Like, okay. I was like, yeah, I can totally see it, and I'm excited about it. But then we're talking about different formats too. So we're working in different format, and working with somebody like Tyler too is great, because he's constantly trying to like push his art or try something new. It's like we're always trying something new, but in a very public way. So it's like, if we fail publicly. But that's also like, that's what's exciting about it, is like, that's what gets you up in the morning, gets you excited to work. Is the idea of like, I don't know if this is gonna work,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what it is. And I'm happiest when there's like a puzzle that needs to be solved, or like a problem that I'm like, like I have a crazy idea, but it's like, well, that's so crazy. Like, I don't know. I've spent a while trying to crack it. Like I'm doing a book cover for, like, I'm just going to tell you what I'm working on right now, but
please. Yeah.
So, Super Spy, one of my older books, is getting a reprint. I'm doing a new version of it, and so I'm working on a new cover. And the cover, I'm trying to do something where there's like a half of a dust jacket that is die cut, and then it overlays the cover, and so like the holes line up, so it'll have the title and the credits on it, But then on the back of the book, there's a ton of letters on the back, and my idea is I want to do this dust jacket where then when I go to sign it at conventions or whatever, I'll have a hole punch, and I can punch out other holes, and then you can line it up, and there'll be other little secret codes on there. Well, that's fun, but also like I spent all day trying to figure out like the letters. Like it's basically like a horrible, like the worst kind of crossword puzzle, where I'm trying to design the back cover so that when I punch out holes, it'll line up 3 different ways,
It's exciting, anyway. Man. It's exciting. It's definitely challenging for sure. I mean, that that moves on nicely to my next question. What have you, in terms of, I asked you about your developing as an artist and stuff, but in terms of as a person, what would be the lesson? Because again, now you've done a lot of stuff, you want to challenge yourself. What would be the biggest lesson you would tell yourself when you were starting your career? If you could, speak to yourself as part of a multiverse or whatever, a different universe, if you could speak to yourself and tell yourself any kind of key tips, what would you impart? What knowledge would you impart on younger self now?
Yeah, I guess I would say, what's interesting is like the backside of that question is like basically like what mistakes did I make, so like don't avoid those mistakes. And so I would think, I think that when I was younger, collaboration is important.
Yeah.
Like, I think don't be afraid to collaborate, but also be very, not choosy or something somewhere between like choosy and being careful. Just pick your collaborators carefully. You want to work with somebody that's smarter than you or does something better than you, and somebody that can raise the project up. And I think early on I was afraid to collaborate at all, because it's like I just wanted total control So I think I might have missed out on some collaborations that would have been fun. And then other times where I collaborated and it's like, without thinking about it, and it's like, oh, well, I was miserable doing it. So I would say pick your partners, your work partners, carefully, but don't be afraid to collaborate.
Yeah, again, that's again, I was going to ask you about your working process. So say you're working on, Berserker. How different is it working on Berserker to say, like any of your other works? Obviously, if you were doing Department H, for example, the creative process must differ depending on who you're collaborating with. So can you talk me through the different collaborative process you've had to deal with over the course of your career? Some of the best bits, but some of the most challenging bits as well.
Yeah. I think, like, for me personally, the most challenging collaboration is where I have to draw a script written by someone else, and I found out just by doing it that it's like, I don't like that, like there's something I don't want to give up in the storytelling. I'm definitely, like, there's artist writers, and then there's writers, and there's artists, and I'm definitely a writer artist. So the writing comes first.
Yeah.
So like, I can't fully give that up. So if I'm just drawing it or whatever, I'm never happy. So that was one of the early collaboration things I learned about myself. But then, working with Keanu on Berserker is not too different than co-writing that I've done with Jeff Lemire. Like, we've written a few things together, and he's the only other person that I've really co-written something with, and I've worked at various ways with other writers, like, or artists, like Brian Hurt and Tyler Jenkins. While they don't get the writing credit, like, I've definitely spitballed ideas of them and kicked ideas around, and like their storytelling. So like there's the line between writing and drawing is like fuzzier depending on who I'm working with, but yeah, I would say with me and Jeff, the writing is, we sort of spitball the idea together, and then we'll take sections and each write one and then stitch it together. That's sort of how our process is. But with Keanu, who hasn't been scripting comics his whole life like me and Jeff had, it's a little bit different, where we create the scenes like this, like we're talking, we write the scenes down, and then I'll be basically like typing them up, transcribing them, and then put it together in a comic format, and then we'll go over that a bunch of times. And so it's a little bit more time consuming that way.
Yeah.
But it's just it's still fun because we're creating. I don't know. I feel like we're collaborating even more than Jeff and I have. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that with me as well. And I think that moves on nicely to another one of my questions in terms of you've worked for many. Again, we talked about some of the companies. Your DC, your Dark Horse Comics, etc. Now, one of the things that young people ask me quite a lot is they say, "Oh, I'm never gonna," they might be an artist, they might be a creative, want to get into comics, but they're like, "Oh, I'm never going to be Matt Kindt. I don't know how do I get in there at these companies?" And is it a job interview sort of scenario, or do you meet people at the pub or the bar or wherever? And like, how do these conversations happen that get your foot in the door for these amazing organizations that have then spearheaded your career as well, and you've been able to go on and do wonderful things with your career, but it's that foot in the door. So if you could talk me through, is it as complicated as going for a job interview, that kind of thing, or what is it like when you're pitching and you're getting your foot in the door at those types of organizations? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I would say, like, there's a million different ways. Like, if you talk to any creator, they all have a different story about how they broke in or how they got the work. But I would say, and I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb, but say the best way to get, like, if you want to work with Marvel, DC, or any like mainstream publisher on work for hire, stuff like that, like, the best way to do that, the best way to get that work is to do your own thing first. Like, get your own book done. Like, if you're a writer artist, that's the easiest way, because you can draw your own thing and get it out there. If you're a writer, you got to find an artist and collaborate. But the idea is to do a project or do a few books that are fully your vision, that show your voice and how you do it. And then like that's your resume, you know, and that's your job interview, is the actual work, doing some work, showing that you can finish a thing, showing that you know how to do whatever it is you're trying to do, and just get it out there. And what I learned was like editors who you end up meeting at conventions, or, you know, going to a bar after a show or whatever and talking to, what I learned about those people, the people that actually do the hiring, is that they are fans of comics. You know, they go to the comic shop every week and pick up new stuff. They don't, like, if they're an editor at Marvel or DC, they have to read the Marvel and DC stuff, but that's not the stuff they enjoy reading. You know, they enjoy picking up Image and Dark Horse books or some indie stuff. You know, if you're self-published, that's the stuff they're looking for, because they're not looking for more of the same. They're looking for new voices, or somebody who's creative and comes at it from a different angle, and can bring something new to it. And then, so yeah, I would do your own thing first. I would start there.
Yeah, I mean, that probably answers some of my next question. But if I'm sure at conventions, and especially, you know, because of the notoriety that all of your work gets, you get plenty of emails, plenty of people coming to you for advice. And I guess if you could tell me some of those key tips that you want to hear from somebody, if somebody comes to you, what kind of skills does somebody need to have? But also, Matt, if you can, what do you not want to see? Because I think some of that gets glossed over sometimes in these chats. You know, people making mistakes. You know, what kind of things do you not want to see from someone if they come to you and they're trying to impress you and they're trying to, you know, try to get their foot in the door, so to speak?
Yeah. Two things. So somebody tweeted the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but I'm appropriating this because it's so true, is that they're basically like, well, how do you break into comics, or how do you get into comics? And he said, if somebody asked me that, I would take them to the studio, and then I would sit them down next to me, and I wouldn't say another word. I would just work all day. And that's how you get into comics. You know, you have to put in the work, which is it's kind of a smart ass way of just saying, like, you got to work hard, like you got to get it done. So the flip side to that is the thing you don't want to see is like half of a comic book, or half of a book, or just a pitch or an outline. It's like you have to, especially your first stuff or your first thing, you need to finish one. Like, even if it's like a 24-page comic, you know, you don't have to do a 200-page graphic novel. Definitely don't make your first book like your 600-page magnum opus that you've been working on your whole life. Don't do that either. Like, that's because you'll never finish it. You know, you want to do bite off just enough that you can chew it and finish it, you know, like a 100-page graphic novel, or like, you know, whatever it is, but have it done. You know, like, no one wants to read just a script. No one wants to see a few pages of art and an outline, especially if you're coming in, no one knows who you are. Do a book, and then by the process of finishing that book, however long it is, by the process of doing it, you'll know whether you're ready or not. You'll either see the final product and be like, I don't know. But you've learned, you know, you've gotten better just by having done it. You know, I did, my first published book was Pistol Whip. It was a 120-page book. But that wasn't the first book I did. I did like maybe like 200 pages worth of mini comics. And I don't mean just like scripts or like half drawn stories. Like, I did full stories. I stapled and photocopied them and put them together and took them to conventions and tried to hand sell them, and like that whole process. So I did that a bunch of times before I even tried to get published. Because that's the other thing, is like, you got to look at your own work and be honest with yourself. Like, is it ready? Like, I don't think Pistol Whip, when I finished it, I was like, this is it. It's as good as I can do. Art and story, it's as good as I can do where I'm at right now. And I compared it to everything out there, and I was like, well, it's not better than everything. It's better than the worst stuff that's published, but it's somewhere in the middle, you know? So I felt like it was maybe ready. But everything before then wasn't. You know, I looked at it, I was like, the art was rough. The stories were like, I was still figuring things out or trying new things, and it wasn't quite right, you know? So you have to be honest with yourself also.
Absolutely. And there's some really valuable stuff in there, Matt. Thank you so much. Two or three more questions then now before we finish. I'd like to, sort of maybe rephrase a sort of tried and tested question. Rather than asking you about career highlights, I'm going to ask you about life highlights, because many people are going to be like, oh, working on this project, working on this comic, working on, working for this company, etc., working on Berserker. And I think it's one of the most popular comic books ever, in terms of how it's sold and everything, which is wonderful. But I'm going to ask you about life highlights, things that you're going to remember, when you're 80, 90, when you're finishing up your life. Not to get too bleak, I'm not wishing you dead. That's not what I'm doing. But the things, whether it's comic book related or otherwise, what are some of the things that you are proud of in your life, things that you love that have happened to you, whether that's comic related or not?
Yeah, I would say, like, getting my first book. I remember my first book, Pistol Whip. I remember taking it to San Diego, and like I had a mock-up made and I handed it out to a bunch of different editors. And then coming home, and like a week later, this is back when there were answering machines. So I remember being in the kitchen and playing the thing, and then there was a message from Chris Staros at Top Shelf saying like, hey, we want to publish this book, we love it. Like, just getting that message was like, that was like a turning point. I don't know if it's the greatest moment in my life. It's definitely not, because I have a daughter who's amazing, and whatever. That's, if I'm going to pick anything, it's going to be that stuff. But as far as career goes, like, that was the thing. I was like, oh, like, there's just a few moments in your life where something decisive happens, where it's like a switch that flips, and that hardly ever happens. And it never happens in just like a moment. It's always like a slow grind, and then gradually you look down, you climb the mountain or whatever. But that was a moment that I'll always remember. And then, yeah, the rest of, to me, like, the way I look at comics is like, I always wanted to do comics for a living, so that I would just write and draw and tell stories, and have fun, and so the books, there's no single book that I'm like, oh, that book is whatever, my crowning achievement. Or I feel like all the books I've done are just like it's like the wake I'm leaving, like I'm traveling through life, and the books are like the thing that comes off of me, that's left behind. And so I don't know what that means. I don't know who it's for, or what it matters. I know that I had fun doing all of them, most of them, all but maybe like 2 books I had fun doing. And so yeah, I mean, that's how I look at it. The rest of it, to me, like, the highlights of my life are just like traveling, spending time with my family and my wife and my daughter, who's just went to college and everything. And like, all of that stuff is what informs what's in the books. So everything that's in those books, it's just like a reflection of my real life stuff, and I'm channeling it.
Beautiful, man. Again, thank you so much for sharing that with me. It's lovely to again see you be successful, sharing a lot of yourself within your work as well. That's wonderful. As an extension of that question, then, again, because a lot of it was covered in your answer there. One thing that I like to ask creators is about bad days. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of creators I know, a lot of young people, again, they ask those questions of themselves. They talk about being successful, and they think, oh, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to do that. And they also have trouble sometimes getting out of bed in the morning because they're feeling down, they're feeling demotivated. And you mentioned a couple of things there, your daughter, obviously your body of work is another thing to motivate you. But if you are having a bad day, Matt, as much as you're comfortable telling me, what are the things that motivate you, whether that is your daughter, whether it is your family, whether it's music or art or movies or anything like that? What kind of things do motivate you if you are having a bad day?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I really do feel like nothing happens in a vacuum. So to me, like, a good movie pulls me out of it, or reading a book, or trying to find comics that you like. Like, I'm always trying to find something that's doing something inspiring, like the biggest motivator to get out of bed is like, oh man, you read a really great book, and then they did something interesting in it, or like a movie that had a great scene or something. And it's like, well, how do you beat that? Like, it's not competition in the normal, like in a sports way, where it's like, I'm trying to beat that person and be better than them. it's like, how can I do, what a great idea. How can I do a better idea in comics, you know, or like, or it's, how do you translate something? It's, to me, it's just like, you gotta love what you do. Like if you wake up and you hate drawing, maybe you shouldn't be drawing, you know, if you hate, if you don't like the process, if you don't enjoy like everything that goes into it, then that might be a problem.
Yeah.
Because there's times I get burned out on writing, but I can draw. So then I'll draw and I'm excited to draw. Then if I draw too much, I get burned out on that. So to me, it's like, I jump back and forth. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, because
It
I
does,
don't,
yeah.
my down days, the worst days for me are the days where I don't get to write and draw and I have to like pay bills or do paperwork or answer emails.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, then I get antsy and I was like, a whole day will go by where like all I did was email and like just like paperwork type businessy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, I feel like I wasted the whole day. And like, it's because I'm like, if I'm not making pages, either writing them or drawing them, I feel like it's wasted time, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we do have to do, you can't be late paying.
Yeah. 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 You know, you have to pay those bills. But when I talk about the email thing, I'm very glad that that I got to speak to you and got to do the email. You know, you got back to me, because it's a pleasure talking to you. A couple more questions then before we do the plugging bit and the press bit of the interview, where I get you to tell me what you're working on as much as you can anyway. I'd like to ask you, what is your message to, again, to the people around you, to the fans that have read your work for the years, and people that are just discovering your work? What is the message to those people that have read your work, supported you, and will continue to do so?
Yeah, I'm so thankful for all the career I've had and the readers that have followed me all these years. And yeah, I don't know, other than I just feel like the anything I'd have to say is in my book, in all the books I've done, and like every book I've done. Like if I had to boil it down, it's just like, be good to other people. You know, it's basically golden rule stuff, you know. It's treat others like you would be treated, and try to bring some joy into the world. And that's it.
I love it, man. I love it. The joy to the world is it's an often used one, but there's none more true than that. I love that. I definitely try and live by that as well. Now, with the last question, rather than me leading it and saying, oh, well, Ether came out last year collected, or Berserker might be getting a Netflix, special or whatever, or series, can you tell me, what would you like to plug? What would you like to promote? Anything you can legally, personally, like what that you're allowed to tell me. Tell me what you're working on, and where people can, where you'd like people to go. Any links or anything like that?
Yeah. No, you can follow me on all the social media stuff. I'm all over that. And then as far as books go, Apache Delivery Service is the new book that me and Tyler Jenkins and his wife Hillary painted. I would get that. I mean, that's issue 1 came out. I think they just did a second printing of it. We're super proud of that one, and it's good. It's a little bit different than anything we've done. And other than that, I stay tuned. Like in the next couple of months, I'm doing a bunch of stuff with Dark Horse, but then we're announcing a bunch of books for this next year. But I can't say anything about them until they tell me I'm able to. But a bunch of new stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to see it. And Matt, thank you so much for making the time for me today. I look forward to catching up with you again soon, mate.
Cool. Thanks.